Are we reconvening at 4, are we?
So I think we're going to have a little bit of a guided break, but I think it'll be a guided meditation now. Is that correct, Radhika?
At 3 o'clock, guided meditation, but we have 15 minutes now to wrap up what we learned. And looks like only 37 participants are left. I think we don't like breakout sessions or something. It's too much mental stimulation and too much, I guess, responsibility. I don't know. I love them because I get to talk to peers and ask them questions, and that's great. But any reflections on what we heard in our breakout sessions? Anyone who has not spoken before, I will ask like a good teacher. Anyone who has not spoken before maybe can share their experiences or discussions. David, I think it's 2 people have raised their hands. So it's David and then Madhavan. Yes, David.
Thank you, Radhika. I will try to summarize group 1 as best I can. We had such a fantastic group from a variety of different sources. So we had people that are working in higher education, people that are working for local governments, people that are working for international nonprofits, efforts to scale and connect local successes and projects in data science, education and sustainability and equity. People who are working in locations specifically related to sustainability. And all of them seem to have a common thread of how you might direct your students to think about the local problems that they're engaging with, the choice that they might have in selecting some of those projects, the benefit that they have to humanity and to sustainability and justice. And then how we might connect some of those together. So are there ways that you can find a local process that works really well and spread it to 100 other locales? So you can do this in some ways by choosing what materials you're working with. We were talking about large data sets and data science. So there's a choice of having materials that would lend students to think about these problems. You might have a specific location, like there was one in the Belize Barrier Reef where students were mapping this with GIS and were able to help a dramatic effort to sustain the 2nd largest barrier reef in the world. Efforts to think about intentionally what are students trying to do when they are using GIS and how are they using data sets from populations that might otherwise be excluded, and then how they are thinking about the values that they get and what they are believing that their work is doing for sustainability and equity, and giving them a chance to think intentionally about it. So that's a brief summary of some of the topics that we came across. So if there's anybody else from group 1 that I missed, please let me know.
Great summary, David. I think GIS and data sets have not been discussed so far, except for Aaron and both the Aarons had mentioned about indicators. I think thanks for bringing that GIS mapping systems discussion. Madhavan?
Hello, everyone. So this is Madhavan. Actually, I'm a global health strategist for United Nations headquarters in New York. Initially, I used to do strategies for everyone, but these days it's focused actually. So this is my basic intro. I was in the global citizenship topic because I particularly feel multilateralism is one of the key agendas that is required in the current situation, and due to multiple crises that has been going around. The discussion were like really amazing. The key takeaways I learned from this particular group is culture is very important in having all sorts of multilateralism or global citizenship. Thank you. Any other gentlemen who or gentlefolk who want to contribute to this topic, please join. Thank you. Thanks, Radhika.
Thank you, Madhavan. Global citizenship education, definitely yes.
I'm a baseline technologist, actually. Sorry, I may have missed that thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Madhavan. It's great if people who are not education people are joining. I think we have Avren here who works on solar. He mentioned Madhavan, health, technology. Wonderful to have such synergies. we get to learn from each other. That's a big part of what I think SN USA does through their coffee networks. We'll share that information later on how to join the coffee networks and how to join specific education related discussions as well through the network. Any other discussion points?
Maybe I can summarize really quickly the discussion we had. So we were in a social justice group and had a really good discussion about how do we keep momentum and keep the link between social justice and climate justice on the agenda. Because at the UN Transforming Education Summit, the Youth Declaration was so clear about setting the social justice and ecological justice, climate justice at the forefront of the discussions. But this justice orientation is lost very often when we begin re-articulating the ideas into the actions and action steps. So we discussed a lot about how do we keep it in the forefront, how do we engage different communities and stakeholders in these discussions, and maybe perhaps how we can infuse this focus on climate justice, social justice in our recommendations coming from this summit as well. But our main discussion point, and which was really powerful, was about how one of the core transformation points is transforming the school systems that currently serves to divide people and knowledges and ideas, and how the education system actually can serve as a bridge across different disciplines, across different ideas, across different groups, and basically how this transformation can happen from school serving as a division to school serving as a bridge. And a shout out to the World Teach-In on Climate Justice that will be happening across the United States and more across the world on March 29th. And David, please put a link again in the group for everybody to share and sign up if you are not part of it yet. And I also, if anybody would like to add anything more from our group, please join in. We took some notes too.
Thank you, Vita. Mark? Actually, sorry, Mark, can I, maybe before that, since Iveta mentioned David, maybe David, 2 lines on worldwide teaching, and then we can go to Mark. Sorry, Mark.
Thank you. It's nice to have other people shouting out your work, because it's our work really, and many of you are involved. And so I guess the two lines are that on or around the 29th of March, that hundreds of institutions around the world are going to be joining together in reaching beyond the usual people who go to climate and sustainability education events to have coordinated but locally determined discussions about climate change, climate solutions, and climate justice. So I just put the link in the chat and put my email, and please join us and learn about it and participate even in a small way.
Thank you so much. This is a good worldwide teaching. It's a big movement. I think everyone should have everyone should participate in this. Mark and then Saya.
So one thing that just occurred to me while I was listening to, and I lost who it was, but I was listening to them speak, and somebody said something about bringing in lots of voices. And so that's one of the things that I haven't mentioned. I've talked about the Compass tools, and I'll put that in the chat.
Mark, you're muted for some reason. Can you unmute, please? I don't know how that happened. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I clicked the wrong one. So bringing in diverse voices. I think Avrin was talking earlier about not just diverse faces, but having diverse voices, and that's one of the things one of the things that the Compass tools brings in. I told a story in our group about a young man who had lost much of his family during the pandemic and would not pay attention, would not sit or participate in any of the activities, but he would in the Compass activities. He would contribute. And so it brings in voices that wouldn't sometimes be heard. It can be set up a lot of different ways, and they're simple but very complex tools to introduce to students of any age, really. And I'll put us in the chat once again. Thanks again.
Thank you, Kaya.
I was from the climate anxiety breakout room, and we had a very engaging conversation about the complexities of addressing climate change, especially because climate change is still something that is contested in curriculums and in states across this nation. And we also talked about how oftentimes mental health is deeply overlooked in curriculum. So being able to find a way to merge climate change conversations and mental health conversations is something that is very complex and something that we need to address in a multidimensional perspective. I know Mary from my group has done a lot of work as a psychologist in addressing climate anxiety and working with psychologists, local climate activists, governmental officials, and teachers to address curriculum and build curriculum that promotes and addresses climate hope and being able to teach hope on a fundamental level across climate change conversations. And also we talked about the importance of self-care, because all of us are doing work to educate or promote activism, and being able to also fill our own cups as we work to do this powerful work is something that's really important. And if anyone else from my group wants to jump into, definitely do. We had a lot of amazing conversations about climate anxiety.
Thank you, Saya. I think, I was actually trying to see which group I will join. And I didn't join. I wanted to join climate anxiety, and I didn't join because I guess it was negatively worded. If it was about climate hope, I would have said, okay, maybe I can make a change. If it was then I saw climate anxiety, and I'm like, what can be done about this? Let me join some other group, which is a little bit more, I can do something about it. And climate anxiety seems more of a psychologist framework. And I was like, okay, I don't know, what can I do about this? It's like too big for me to handle. So I think we need to somehow, maybe others are thinking of the same thing. And I noticed that it was the smallest group amongst all our groups. So maybe it's something to do with the courageous people are the ones who join climate anxiety because they know it exists, and we need to make a dent. But other meek people like me joined some other group because I thought that I can do something positively with this, whereas the others. So I think somehow framing and making that connection and making the hope language needs to be brought in somehow. But that's just my opinion. If there are any other discussions on climate anxiety or any other reflections on what Saya mentioned from anyone else?
I'd like to comment on that. I actually did want to join that group, but I wanted to support my colleague Wen. So apologies, Saya, but I wanted to join it precisely because it was titled Climate Anxiety, because it's real and it's overwhelming. And our students are living with it, and it's shaping them in formative ways, right? And I think something that was shared yesterday, Barnaby said, our ability to stay, right, in these spaces of uncertainty and to grapple with these realities together, that is what is going to create, right, a new reality and really transform. We become transformed in the process, and then we transform everything around us, right? The reality that we manifest. So I applaud you for doing that, and I'm sorry that I couldn't attend, but.
Thank you, Sunu. I think that is a perfect segue to our session, which will help us to assimilate all our information. We have gone through 2 days of lot of ideas, and I think it will be nice to have Saya lead us into a discussion as we go forward. I'll ask Hen to lead the discussion as well.
Well, thank you, Radhika. Thanks, everyone. It's great to see you all. I'm really excited for this session with Saya because I know yesterday, for those of you who joined yesterday, we also had a half-hour meditation kind of break session. And we had 10 minutes of just silence, meditation, and going into it. In the beginning of the 10 minutes, I have to admit, my mind was still very much, it wasn't very different. I just had my eyes closed, but I was still thinking about, oh, we need to, message the next moderators, make sure they have all the slides and everything. So it was very busy, but by the end of the 10 minutes, I really was in a different place. So I think taking these breaks is really, but it also made me realize how it requires a lot more intentionality and effort and time to incorporate these breaks and intentional breaks. So I'm so glad we're doing this. And Saya, thank you so much. Just to introduce Saya a bit, Saya Archana Darira, she is passionate about social justice and youth empowerment in climate spaces. She works as a digital engagement lead for Turn It Around flashcards for Education Futures. For those of you who joined yesterday, there was a fantastic presentation. I would recommend to check out the recording if you weren't able to join. It's a movement that strives to elevate the voices of youth in environmental and educational advocacy settings through the use of artistic and written creative expression. Additionally, as the Director of Development of One Up Action International, she leads the design team on creating international and national programs that fund, mentor, and support youth in building climate solutions. She is also the policy co-chair of the U.S. Youth Advisory Council for the United Nations Ocean Decade, where she works with a group of youth in consulting Congress on climate and ocean policies. And she graduated from Arizona State University with degrees in global management, social and cultural analysis, peace studies, and psychology. So Saya, thank you so much for joining us and for leading us in this session.
Definitely. I just first of all wanted to open up saying that I'm so deeply inspired by all of you here. Thank you for all the powerful work you do to transform education and the world. It's so deeply needed, and it takes a lot of energy and courage to address these problems in the world and solve them. Today, I'll be leading a mindfulness session, and I want to emphasize that as we work to focus on healing the world outside of us, sometimes it can be so easy to neglect taking care of our inner worlds and pouring in love, energy, and attention to our own selves. So I wanted to take a moment today to encourage all of you to give love and intention to yourselves through this mindfulness exercise. So we're going to open by doing Zoom yoga. When COVID-19 first hit, I spent hours and hours on Zoom every day, and oftentimes I'd get cramps or get kind of like burnt out from spending so much time on Zoom. I know we've all been on Zoom for a little bit today and yesterday too. So we're going to do a brief Zoom yoga session. You don't have to be an expert in yoga to do this. This is very easy. So first off, put your hands in front of you and just shake them. Shake off any tension in them. You may close your eyes if you want. Move your arms up to the side. And then bring them to the center. Now we're going to do some light stretches. So raise your right hand in the air and lean it over your body, taking deep breaths in and out. Bring your hand up again and bring it down, and raise your left arm in the air as high as you can, and then lift it over your head, breathing in and out as you go. Raise your arm up again, bring it down. Now roll your head clockwise. As you go down, breathe in slowly, and as you go up, breathe out. You may close your eyes if you'd like. Now switch directions, going counterclockwise. breathing in as you go down and breathing out as you go up. When you reach the top, close your eyes and take a few deep breaths in and out. As you breathe in and out, take a moment to look within. What feelings and sensations are arising, whether emotional or physical sensations. Take a moment to take note of them. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. So today I will be taking you all through two exercises with mindfulness. One is a breathing exercise that originated from India that many of my ancestors have done. And the other one is a compassionate body scan that Dr. Kristen Neff created. Kristen Neff is a self-compassion researcher. She has done a lot of research on supporting humanitarians and workers helping the world heal and also healing themselves. So we're going to do a lot of deep introspection and mindfulness work today, and we will be done in about 20 minutes. So mute yourselves if you're not muted already, and make yourselves comfortable. So first off, we're going to do something called alternate nostril breathing. For this, we will be sitting straight with our spines erect. And with your right hand, I invite you to create a peace sign with your hands and put it over your nostrils. So we're going to be breathing through each nostril while covering the other. So I'm going to do a brief demo before you all start. So you first breathe in through your left nostril, covering your right nostril. Then you cover your right nostril and then breathe out through your right nostril. Then you breathe in through the right nostril. Cover it and breathe out through the left. So every time you breathe in and out, you cover the other nostril and breathe out through the nostril, if that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions or? Okay, so I invite you to cover your right nostril and breathe in through the left, taking a deep breath in. And then cover the left nostril and breathe out through the right. Breathe in through the right nostril. Cover the right nostril and breathe out through the left. Breathe in through the left nostril. Cover the left nostril and breathe out through the right. Now continue at your own pace, alternating nostrils as you breathe in and out. At your last exhale, I invite you to rest your hands in your lap, palms facing the sky, and close your eyes, taking deep breaths in and out. I invite you to get in touch with your body and how it feels right now in the present moment. Feel the weight of your body on your seat and notice the entire field of body sensation. Any tension, any prickling feeling, any pressure, or any lightness you may feel, take a moment and become aware of it. Let's move our attention and awareness to different parts of our body. Starting at the crown of your head, notice any sensations there. If there are any tingling sensations there, let them be and take note of them. Now shift your attention to your facial muscles. If you feel any tension or stress in your face, breathe in and out into the tension, letting it be and taking deep breaths in and out, taking note of any sensations in your face. Become aware of your neck. What sensations are there? Breathe in and out as you tune in to this part of your body. Now drop your attention to your shoulders. A lot of emotions such as fear, stress, and tension tend to be held in the shoulders. First, take a moment to see if there's any emotions there or any physical sensations. Take note of them and just let them be, breathing in and out. Next, bring your awareness to your chest. Take note of any physical or emotional sensations there and let them be. Taking deep breaths in and out, become aware of your chest area. Drop your attention down to your stomach, taking note of any sensations there. Become aware of your legs. Take note of any tension, fatigue, or tingling sensations stored in the legs. Observe any sensations there and take deep breaths in and out. Now drop your attention to your feet. Feel the weight of your feet touching the ground and take note of any sensations there. Take a deep breath in, filling in all of your lungs, and breathe out slowly. Now take a moment to become aware of your entire body from head to toe. Take deep breaths in and out, and spend the next few moments just sitting with yourself in silence. Any feelings, emotions, or sensations that may arise, let them come. And keeping your eyes closed, take deep breaths in and out. Take a moment to silently thank your body for all that it has done for you. Feeling a deep sense of gratitude wash over you. Take another deep breath in, filling all of your lungs with air. And breathe out slowly. When you're ready, I invite you to slowly open your eyes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me in this mindfulness session. I hope you all remember to give love and care and attention to yourselves as you work to do all the powerful work you do in the world. I'm going to hand it back to Huan to close off the session.
Thank you so much, Saya. I love that you said it towards the end, all that your body has done for you, just feeling that gratitude. I think I mean, I've done some like meditation sessions before, but I don't think I've heard it quite phrased that way. And I think that's such a beautiful way, that gratitude, right? I know we often talk about, ownership over our bodies, but having that gratitude and all that our body has done for us, that just made me think of, my own body in a different way too. So that was really beautiful and wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think Radhika and Sonia, I think we have half hour before our next roundtable discussion, which starts at 4. I think now we can go into another round of break, and then we would ask that you join for our last roundtable of the day, and then we'll have closing keynote to end the day. But please do stick around, so we'll have half-hour break, and we'll see you back here soon. Thank you. We're at the roundtable session for today, the afternoon session. So in one of the keynotes earlier this morning, one of the speakers, Noah Sobi, said when we talk about transforming education, it's important to think about how people learn along the entirety of their lives. So to that end, this roundtable discussion is titled Making Lifelong Learning Possible Through Linkages K through 12 and beyond. And so we have 4 amazing discussants today here who are educators working in different spheres with slightly different roles for education for sustainable development and also climate education and project-based learning. So we'll discuss some of the various elements and approaches that can facilitate long-lasting learning, knowledge, skills, and traits. So the format of this session is going to be, I will allow around 5 minutes for each of our speakers to introduce themselves and share a bit about their work. And then we'll go through a few questions for the discussants to go over. And then after that, we'll allow for audience Q&A. So our 4 discussants today, think there's a little bit of a lag, but hopefully you can see our screen. Our 4 discussants are here today. We're going to start with Dr. Nick Lisi. Nick, if I can ask you to introduce yourself and go into your presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Hayan. And thanks to all the organizers and for folks being here on a Friday afternoon. We've gotten 1.5 feet of snow in the past couple of days in Minneapolis. So it brings me a lot of joy to know that there are folks who live in places that haven't got 1.5 feet of snow. I'm excited to be in conversation with y'all. Like Hayan said, my name is Nick Lisi. I'm a former high school English teacher and nature educator, and I'm currently serving as the Director of Community Engagement at the Center for Climate Literacy at the University of Minnesota. And ahead of our conversation, I want to do 2 things. One is to share the center's definition of climate literacy, and 2, talk through very briefly of what our work looks like on the ground. And Hayan, if you could advance the slide just 1, I would appreciate it. At the Center for Climate Literacy, we define climate literacy as an understanding that harmonizes multiple ways of knowing. So on the one hand, that's explicit and objective knowledge, or more empirical and scientific. And on the other hand, that's tacit and subjective knowledge, or more interpretive and literary. And we combine those 2 into a lived and emotionally charged and personally felt understanding of the climate predicament that we're in. And so this definition of climate literacy includes climate science knowledge, but it centers the humanities. with a focus on developing values and attitudes and behavioral change aligned with how we should be living in regards to the earth. And so at the center, we believe that this type of literacy is best cultivated across disciplines, across grade levels, across life stages, in and out of the classroom, all through engagement with story. And if we could advance the slide just one more time, I think I've just got one more slide. And stories we find to be very useful here and vital because they are the most information dense, multifaceted, flexible, and universal tools that we have as human beings for conveying and deliberating our sense of the world. Stories happen everywhere, and thus they allow climate literacy education to happen everywhere. And these can be brief engagements with stories too. They can be picture books, comics, oral stories, music videos, clips from Frozen 2, anything that's narrative. It can be the vehicle by which learners apply what they already know about climate science to their thinking about relationships, culture, politics, ethics, society, emotions. And this allows for interdisciplinary and intergenerational learning, but it also creates this mass decentralized community of learners who understand both the science and how the science reveals the living toll of the crisis, but also the opportunity to transform our civilization. And so in short, we think of climate literacy as happening through stories, and in doing so, allowing us to imagine otherwise. In practice, what this looks like on the ground is that we work with, right now, primarily educators to equip them with the resources and understanding they need to implement climate literacy education in their specific context. And our definition of educator is pretty broad. So this includes educators in the community, elders, caregivers, gardeners. But for the most part right now, based on the infrastructure we have at the center, it's primarily with K-12 teachers and elders. We've been working with retirement communities, and it's been a blast. And we offer workshops and institutes for those folks. We have a year-long fellowship program in which teachers can develop materials for their particular classrooms. We have a website called Climate Lit that serves as a hub of book reviews and lesson plans. We also have a scholarly journal. We just launched our first issue a couple weeks ago called Climate Literacy and Education. And we publish critical articles, reflections, multimedia, and curriculum. And it's all super short, so that educators can just like grab it and go and implement it. And to the extent that our funding allows, educators are paid to do this work. And we see this as being crucially important and hopefully transformative, given the amount of unpaid and underpaid labor that educators are already asked to do. So that's our model, is compensated, collaborative, and cooperative. And it's for that reason that I'm excited to be here with y'all and to be in conversation with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. I know there will be a lot of questions, but for now, we'll go through the presentations and we'll come back. But thank you for sharing that and also sharing the resources and the model under which your programs work. Thank you. Next, our discussant is Carly Holbein. Carly, if you can introduce yourself and share a bit about your work.
Definitely. Hello, everyone. My name is Carly Holbein. I'm the program coordinator at the Gonzaga Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk a little bit about what the center does and how we're trying to support climate literacy and sustainable education in Spokane, Washington, which is where Gonzaga University is. You could go to the next slide. So what I want to focus on today a little bit is talking about one of the models we use, which is students teaching students. But before we get into that, a little bit about the Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment. We have been founded to provide resources and opportunities to meet the unprecedented challenges facing humanity and the wider natural environment in the 21st century. And that takes a lot of different forms. But for my work in particular, that means working with students, both undergraduates and K-12 students, and educators who work with those students to talk about what climate literacy means for them and how they can bring it into their classrooms in a way that's appropriate for where we live, for the age of the students they work with, and in a way that's relevant, that the students are going to gravitate towards and feel is an authentic experience for them. Next slide.
So in particular, I want to talk about the Climate Literacy Fellows, which is one of the ways that we work with students and teachers here at the Climate Center. So the fellows were developed as a partnership with the Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction and a special program called Climb Time. And so we hire and train undergraduate students to deliver high impact climate literacy lessons in K-8 classrooms. And so we're hoping to help teachers and students develop foundational scientific understandings about climate, but also understand the cultural, economic, and ethical issues related to climate. And so we have a definition of climate literacy on the slide about understanding how climate influences them and how they influence the climate, whether that's through a scientific understanding or broader cultural understandings. One of the things that we really love to do is our students write the lessons that they take into the classrooms with them. And so we train our students on best practices for teaching climate change, but then let them decide what students in Spokane probably care about. And so all of our lessons focus on hands-on science learning. So we bring materials and kits into the classrooms. All of them feature student-driven inquiry. So they all have 10 to 15 minutes to do explorations, whether that's with kits, with their peers, learning about a new topic. And most of our lessons are also place-based. So localizing the impacts of climate change so that students know what they're going to be seeing in their backyard happening to their families and their communities. So next, I want to highlight some pictures of some student work. All of our interactions with students, we try and get some student work and student voice. And so the first one I love, it's a student who is making connections between what they're learning in the classroom about renewable energy and not wasting energy. And so the lesson is about renewable energy, how it's produced, what we make here in Washington, and how it can transform the economy. But you can see that their learning is absolutely going to transfer home to their parents. Don't waste energy. They've got like a little picture of money there, like, and you can just tell that this is something a student's going to take home with them. In the bottom, you can see a student who was engaging with another renewable energy lesson, and you can see that they're imagining what the future could look like if we had renewable energy. There's solar panels on the house, right? And they're imagining what their future could be. And so it's a really powerful way for students to broaden their scientific understanding to encompass other parts of their life. And so the last one is my favorite. It's simple and to the point. And the student drew this for us on Earth Day last year, and I have it hanging in my office. And I like it because it's a reminder that the students, they know what we're talking about. This was drawn by a 4th grader. And so they may have some problems spelling climate, but they got the gist of what we were saying. And the other really excellent thing is this student to student model where undergraduates are engaging directly with elementary students and middle school students shows them a pathway to higher education. For a lot of the students in our area, sometimes that's not a pathway that they think is available to them. And so providing interactions with young people who are in college, who are studying the sciences and doing something because they care about the environment really broadens their horizons and opens new opportunities and ideas to them about what they could do with their life after they leave school.
Thank you so much, Carly. I think one of the things that a few participants brought up since yesterday is just the use of different medium for communicating different stories, different knowledge, what has been more personal to the students. It's really great to see the artwork of students directly from your work. So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura. Laura Tang, if you can introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I can also share my screen so I have quite a few slides so I can advance them.
Please feel free to share if you'd like.
Can you see that?
Let me stop. Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Tang, and I'm the Center Coordinator at the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, Center for Professional Learning. The world is full of complex problems, including climate change, which demand truly ambitious approaches to education, such as hands-on transformative education. So I'm really excited to be here today with all of you and talking about the different roles that we can play in this. We really believe that if we expect ambitious learning and climate education for students, then we really need to support ambitious learning for teachers so that they can have the knowledge, skills, and capacities that they need to do this work. And I'm really excited to be sharing about one of our programs that we've designed for this and that I've been thrilled to be a facilitator and now to be researching as well. So here at Penn, we have this deep expertise in research on project-based learning. Many educators are familiar with more direct approaches to teaching, but what about teaching that goes beyond lecturing, where students can not just learn about climate change, but really engage in climate justice projects themselves? So throughout work at Penn GSE, we've identified 4 driving goals and 10 core teaching practices of project-based learning, where students collaborate with each other on problems that are authentic to themselves and to their communities. And then at the University of Pennsylvania, beyond our School of Education, we have scholars and practitioners exploring climate justice across all different disciplines. So we were really excited to be able to combine these 2 areas of expertise in this teaching approach of project-based learning with the global climate justice expertise of scholars and practitioners, and created the Project-Based Learning for Global Climate Justice Certificate Program. And this was really designed for educators in the K-12 space, as well as in higher education, to learn about how they could engage their students in authentic, action-oriented, and meaningful learning experiences. So we kicked off the first completely virtual iteration of this program in September of 2022. And we were thrilled to have more than 100 educators from over 20 different countries enroll in this program. And it's divided into 3 parts. So in part 1, the teachers are really the learners themselves, and they explore resources to deepen their own understanding of climate justice issues and learn about how scholars and practitioners from different disciplines all engage with these different issues. In part 2, in Vision, educators participate in design sprints to learn about the principles of project-based learning and sketch out project ideas that are relevant and authentic to their own local contexts and their classrooms and students. And then finally, in part 3, Enact, educators implemented their projects with their students, whether it's over the course of days or weeks or months. And at the same time, also engaged in these virtual meetings with each other, other educators in the program, and with facilitators as they reflect on their own experiences, but also navigate these challenges and questions that came up that they didn't necessarily anticipate in the design phase, and work through these together. So from this, we've learned a lot. First, this importance of centering authenticity. We find that it's really important to have this authentic question for students to really explore that matters to them, to have an authentic product that they can create and an impact that they can create that's real. These elements come together to form an authentic project that students can really be compelled and motivated by. And then to integrate expertise, project-based learning asks students to do real disciplinary work on complex issues. So this requires disciplinary experts from teachers as well, which it can be their own that they draw on, as well as the expertise of collaborators, colleagues, community members. And then sharing examples, we find that not many teachers have experienced this type of hands-on climate education for themselves or even seen it in action in other classrooms. So having participants really our participants really appreciated being able to see example lesson plans, having templates to structure their ideas, and exchanging resources like assessments. And then finally, collaboration. Just like PBL encourages students to collaborate, teacher collaboration, we found, was just really essential for project success. And we found that teachers really benefited from meeting in small groups and appreciated having this as a source of learning, motivation, accountability for them as they work towards these ambitious teaching and learning goals. So yeah, we're super thrilled to be offering this and learning from this. We're learning so much and really excited to hear about how educators have been transforming their practices from this as well. So if you're interested in learning more, there's our website, and you can also enroll in our next cohort, which is starting this fall.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think there are already a few comments in the chat wanting to know more details about your program. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do that. For now, Lucia Rodriguez, we have our last discussion. Lucia, if you can introduce yourself and share about your MDP program. Thank you.
Need to unmute.
Lucia,
I think you're on mute, Lucia.
But we see your slides.
Okay.
So
Oh, you
maybe,
see the slides. Okay, good.
yeah, but if you want to go to the front.
There it is. Okay, good. So I am Lucia Rodriguez. I am the director of the MDP Secretariat, which is MDP stands for Masters in Development Practice. I am housed, or I sit at the UN SDSN. And before that, we were at Columbia University. So we have a very close relationship with them since Jeffrey Sachs was, or is, the intellectual founder of the MDP. So I'm going to talk to you about the MDP, which is really, I mean, I've been hearing a lot about the students, the teachers, and so we deal more with people that are outside that traditional field. They may be engineers, they may be accountants, so really, and definitely educators as well, but the majority are outside of that field. And so just to get us so that we're clear in terms of what this graduate degree program is, it's definitely, it incorporates the SDGs, but at the core of it is the Brundtland Commission report definition of sustainable development. And so I just wanted to put it up there, pop it up, just to remind us that we really are talking, we're not specifically as a graduate degree program focused on climate change, but how can you talk about sustainable development without, dealing with climate change and all of the other SDGs? So that, when I have more time, I'll put that definition at the center of this. And then, so because that for us is the field, sustainable development is the field. And then the topics or the areas of study are really all the SDGs. This MDP program was started in 2008. And I say that because 2008, we didn't have SDGs. So we were doing this really under that umbrella of the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. And so with the transition, it was perfect. We didn't have to change a lot of things. We just broadened and really focused more on how we are integrating these SDGs into our program. And so what is it? Any graduate degree program, you're going to have, the knowledge, but this knowledge is very interdisciplinary. And so you get these engineers, you get, lawyers, the medical doctors. And so the core courses that they have to take are natural, social management, and health sciences. And there's a slew of different courses under each of those, but they can choose, they can select. Of course, there's a focus on skills as well, technical, organizational, social, and cultural, and then attitudes. You have to have the attitude in terms of, you have to really be concerned and want to work on the well-being and capabilities of all world citizens. So that's sort of, there's more, but we don't have a lot of time for that right now. So this is the foundation of the MDP. And so what I wanted to say as I've started is mid-career. So it's lifelong learning, really, because these are people who are already coming to us. Some already have their master's degree in another field. And so they want to broaden their horizons. They come to us saying, we need to better understand. We may have an engineer in India who needs to understand how, health is impacting the infrastructure, the roads that he's building in India. And so this is the type of program that fits that person. So they're mid-career, they tend to be between 26 years old and up to 50. So they're older. And we have 30 MDP programs around the world, literally in 26 countries and growing. We don't want to stop at 26, but right now that's what we have. And there's about 6,000 graduates. And so, but education, right? Education for sustainable development is, for me, you know, you got to have that practice. You got to have what Laura was talking about, what everybody was talking about, practice, implementing everything that you're learning. You know, you have to roll up your sleeves, as I say, you know, and have that boot in the ground type of experience. And so we do have that. That is one of the requirements of this graduate degree program. And it, you know, could be that this practice can be between 3 months to 6 months, depending on the MDP program around the world. So, you know, it starts all of this part of the courses that you'll take. You'll start researching wherever you're going to do that practicum. And then you actually go out to the field, and that's where you spend 3 months or 6 months working with the community, with the government. It depends, right? And one of the important things is, I want to, you know, again, I've said it already, these students work across sectors. They cross, you know, it's very cross-disciplinary, and they are learning because they may come in with their expertise in engineering, but they know nothing about, you know, the community that they're going to be working in, the role of women in that community, the challenges that that community may have in terms of healthcare, et cetera. And so it's, you know, for those that come, it's really have been a very enlightening type of program. So examples, so what do they do? You know, so they come in, almost think of them as consultants that come to a field, to a specific area, and they have to write something. They do, even though they spend 3 months or 6 months in a place, they come out with some kind of report. So it can be a comprehensive cross-disciplinary situation analysis, environmental protection plan, or it can be a climate change and adaptation mitigation strategy. And so, for example, you have this student here who is from Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, and he went, you know, this beautiful scenery. You would say, my God, what, you know, he must have had a ball there, and he probably did, but he was working on climate change. And this was in Fiji. And so he wrote a paper at the end of this, he was there 4 months, perception of climate change and adaptation by smallholder highland farmers in Fiji. So that's, you know, so he went from Ireland to Fiji, and that's what he did. This one is also on climate change. You have the young man there with the red striped shirt, red and white, and he was also writing on climate change, enabling adoption of climate resilient policies in Uganda. And this specific student was from the University of Botswana, working, you know, going to Uganda, also on the continent, and working on that issue. And, you know, just other examples, another example of students, the one with the white shirt here is from UCOD in Senegal. And here he's in Ghana, working with a cooperative in Ghana and working on business. So not necessarily climate change, but, you know, other areas. Then you have this one also, University of Perdania in Sri Lanka, and they're focused on natural environment and the human impact. So they were doing some kind of, they were going to, this was the beginning of their field experience. And the reason I included this specific video or this picture is because they're not, you know, it's not just students traveling around the world for having fun and having a good time. The students as well focus internally in their own backyard. And so these are University of Perdania students doing their field experience in Perdania. And that's why I want to share this picture. And this is the same, the girl with the little cat or bear, with the blue cat and bear in the white t-shirt. She's Brazilian, so at the University Federal de Rio de Janeiro, and she's working with the women's cooperative in Rio de Janeiro. So it doesn't, you know, it's a, and then the last picture, because I know I'm taking time here. These are students from University of Winnipeg. And so these students, specifically this University of Winnipeg, and the students, they said they wanted to make changes to the program. They didn't necessarily want to go abroad or internationally when they said we have our own issues here in our backyard. And keeping in mind the SDGs, right, and Agenda 2030, it's about, you know, how do we make the global local as well, and looking at global South, global North, because we all have issues, we all have challenges that are opportunities. So these are students working with indigenous cultures in their region. So that is it for now, and I'm sure that we'll have more questions. Let me stop sharing. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Lucia. I love the emphasis on the practice part of your program. And one thing that I was thinking about for all four of your programs is how there are some things that you mentioned about your model and your program where I would place under, okay, that's more, it relates to knowledge versus that's a little bit more about attitude and values as well. So maybe to that end, I will open it up for our first question, which is, so from your work and your perspective, what do you see as being the core elements or dimensions of either climate education and or education for sustainable development more broadly beyond the science knowledge component? So how would you if you can, there's no order for this, so whoever would like to go first, please go ahead.
For me, it's about being, interdisciplinarity is really key, it's really important. So that even if you're just focused on climate change or climate mitigation or adaptation, yes, but you also have to broaden that lens and look at, and it's what we've been hearing all day, yesterday and today, and really look at, the impact of whatever you're doing on other sectors and on other communities, and so I'll stop at there because I see, others who probably that can expand on what I'm saying.
I can build on that because I think what I was going to say is kind of similar around the interdisciplinary aspect for sure, but also drawing these connections and having the authentic applications, I think is really big, and having students really be able to wrestle with a question that matters to their context and has that authentic impact. Especially, I know climate change is also breeding so much climate anxiety, and for students to be able to do this work and not just learn about it can be really empowering when in the face of something that can be so daunting oftentimes. And so I do think that's a core element for sure, is having this authentic problem to wrestle with. It's a very real challenge, and having these authentic products that students are engaging in that can make a real difference in their lives, their communities, their contexts.
And I think part of that too is that when you provide students opportunity.
Is it just me, Carly? I'm unable to hear you. Can you try? Let me try muting you, and then maybe you can, oh wait, I just unmuted you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Okay. I was going to say, I think the other part of that, providing students opportunities for authentic problem solving and engagement in a local context, is that you're teaching about a global phenomenon, whether it's a sustainable development goal or climate literacy. You're localizing that to something that matters authentically to them. And not only does that provide them opportunities to act on feelings like eco grief or eco anxiety that come with learning about topics like this, but it also can provide a hopeful lens that there is something students can do, and it can motivate and excite them about the future they can build. So instead of teaching climate and climate literacy through a lens of doom and gloom about the impacts and how terrible it's going to be in the future, painting this picture and providing them the opportunity to discover what the world could be if we did something, if they did something in their community, can be a really powerful antidote to the usual feelings that come with learning about climate change. And I think it's especially important to provide that for the young students we work with, but also for adults. When we talk about climate change with adults, people don't want to talk about it because it's a huge bummer. And so painting that picture and reframing the narrative away from terrible impacts towards the future we could create together that is just and verdant and full of life can be much more motivating and powerful for taking action.
Totally. I second everything everybody said. And from the perspective of the humanities, once that interdisciplinarity and actionability sort of come together, then climate becomes a lens through which everybody sees the world, and even things that may seem detached from climate issues suddenly take on this new rich meaning. For instance, I grew up in Iowa on a pig farm in the third leading pork producing county in the nation. And even though that in itself doesn't scream climate, it's connected to all these systems that are ecocidal. So adopting that lens allows young people to see that and defamiliarizes it a little bit.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I, in your responses, you've already hit upon this a little bit, but if you can, I'll share a little bit more, is what has been your experience in your work in the process of going from knowledge to action taking, right? On the part of your students, but I also want to add the part about how about those students also being a part of that larger community so that it can also be collective action taking, right? You have now an individual that is more aware, more mindful of the things that they're learning through your programs, but how do they also become better integrated into that community that they are trying to, you know, affect change in? If you can share a bit about that as well.
I think for us, we really see this happening in the going from the envision and design sprint stage of planning these projects to the enact phase, where teachers are actually implementing these and coming together in this community of practice. And what we're seeing like time and again, I think, is that there are so many challenges, especially to doing like climate education and project-based climate education, where we're like giving so much more agency to students, where unanticipated challenges arise. So for instance, one of the educators I've been working with has this wonderful, ambitious project of learning so he's an educator in China, and his class is looking at how to recycle masks, like the disposable masks that were being worn every single day at this time. And they were partnering with like a factory to go and bring their students in and learn these different processes. And as the course evolves, they come upon a lot of different challenges with actually accessing these factories, or actually like what can the students do there, or when the shutdowns began in China, how can we continue our classes? And this was kind of seen all across our educators, no matter the projects they were working on, being able to have people to keep on talking about your designs with and your projects with, the challenges that came up. I think it's really important, because time and again, we heard educators say like, oh, I really didn't like see this coming. This is a lot harder than I anticipated, and it's not what I had planned. And how can we scale and pivot and adapt? And having that adaptability was even something that they ended up teaching a lot of their students, was how can you, as you implement your own projects, also adapt, and as you come across these barriers as well. So I think for us, this aspect of collaboration, having this support as you do this work, is so important.
Another thing that we've done, so in addition to our teaching students model, we also provide professional development for teachers. And one of the things we work with them about is to reframe how they think about climate education, because I think a lot of teachers approach this space and see it as an overwhelming challenge of curriculum scarcity, because they're already trying to teach so much and are being held accountable to so many standards that they see adding one more thing as a burden, which it can be. And so pivoting and reframing the way they think about it as an opportunity for authentic engagement with their students and student-directed inquiry, and the way they can use climate change as a lens while doing the things they're already doing, is a much more powerful way to get them started in the process. So instead of trying to take on a big brand new unit or a big brand new project, showing them the little ways they can start to bring this in until they feel comfortable enough to take on something like a student action project that'll take a whole year. Why not think about how you could talk about it in your math class using graphs, or talk about it in an English class using selected readings? And so finding that sweet spot of how can you integrate it to what you're already doing so that that curriculum scarcity doesn't seem too insurmountable for them?
Okay, in terms of what we do, for us, what has been really key and pivotal is SDG 17, partnerships, right? That's what we're talking about, partnerships, because when we need to do a lot of work in terms of finding the field sites where the students will go, whether they're at home or abroad. And you know, we don't really turn anyone away in terms of any partner that's interested in working with us, be it a government, being an agency, we will engage with them. And so a really good example was that maybe 3-4 years ago, we had the International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD, come to us, and they're very focused on rural development. So we had, you know, yes, we have all these MDP programs around the world, but I wasn't sure if I would get enough people or students that were interested in rural development, because even though we're doing sustainable development, you know, a lot of them are really focused on cities and other things, not necessarily the rural. But so we had a lot of interest, to my surprise, and a lot of excellent work that occurred. Because of it, they went out to the rural areas. They were out of their comfort zones. They had to, you know, little things that we take for granted, you know, riding a little motorcycle to get to the field site, and, you know, that being the first time, and them fearing a lot of times for their life, literally. But it was this partnership. I mean, IFAD really pushed us and pushed the students out of the comfort and said, okay, you've been studying all this great information. You talk a great language of interdisciplinarity and, you know, cross-sectoral work and not working in silos. Okay, now we need you to really do it. And can you help us with this situation around, you know, the 226 field sites that they have around the world? So partnership was really key for us.
Thank you.
I'll just add two things briefly. Oh yeah, thank you. Two things briefly. One is that we at the center have been trying to get smarter about giving educators the resources to think about their own adultist biases, which we define as believing a belief that middle-aged adults have all the answers to the solution, and it's okay for young people to come on board and learn too, but follow our lead. And a rejection of that takes young people very seriously. And on the other side of that coin, rejecting ageism and seeing older adults as having a lot to teach us too. And in the experiences I've had working with older adults on climate education, they're angry. They're like really upset. And so bringing those communities together has been really amazing. And I was going to mention this too, but it ties into a question I see in the chat about linking K-12 and higher ed. I think it's incumbent on higher ed folks who are, this is me being in higher ed too, who are overworked, but have this institutional privilege that K-12 folks don't, to create spaces and actively invite K-12 people in, and if possible, to compensate them. We worked with a teacher recently from South Dakota, and they were a mid-career teacher that switched schools, and their salaries $29,000 a year, which is gross. But to the extent that those resources can be shared across, is I think what also leads to action.
Nick, to follow up on that, we in our professional development workshops always assume that our teachers have very limited knowledge of climate science. And so we do an overview so that everyone operates from the same base of knowledge. But what I love is then I have these teachers who are asking me the questions that I would also expect to hear from students, right? These like questions about, well, what about natural variability? Or what about the sun? Or what about this? And what about that? And I love to take that as an opportunity to redirect their thinking for the classroom. Like, so you don't know, turn it back on your students. If you have a student who in your lesson, they're like, well, what about this? I heard this. You don't have to have all the answers as the educator. Learn together with your students, put it back on them and say, that is an awesome question. I want you to research that at home. And then I want you to teach me and all of your classmates what you learned. That this is an excellent lens and opportunity to co-create knowledge with students. That it's not just empty buckets waiting to be filled with knowledge, but an opportunity for them to bring their personal expertise of their lived experiences and whatever they can find through their own inquiry and share it with a community in their classroom, and to allow teachers to live in that space of not knowing and lean into it. Let those students start to direct their own learning and teach you in the process. So it's uncomfortable, but it's climate science and climate literacy is the perfect lens to do that kind of teaching, because there are a lot of unanswered questions or questions that you only know half of, or it's just a really wonderful space to do that kind of learning.
And I want to add to what everybody has been saying, and specifically addressing that question of linking higher ed to K through 12. And I think, one of the voices that I haven't heard here today has been from those in the Model UN world, so Model United Nations world. And if you've done Model UN, which is really stepping into the shoes of UN ambassadors and playing the role of being a UN ambassadors and having to decide on an issue, for me, I see that as the perfect sort of communion with the K through 12 and college students, which is what I work with, right? So I'm thinking, to do Model UN, which is, it occurs in the middle school, the high school and college, those Model UNers, whether they're, and the teachers, they need background guides. So why not have the college students, specifically the ones I'm working with, this is the idea that we've been tossing around and thinking about, helping that Model UN community with those background guides, bringing in the knowledge that they have, making sure that whatever is being written in those background guides, which the teachers and the students use, is interdisciplinary. That's not just focus. And because it's Model UN, it will be covering with, it'll be covering these issues, sustainable development, all of these issues we're talking about today. But that's for me a very specific example of how we can sort of link that, the college, for me, college and K through 12.
That's a great concrete example. I was also wondering, I have seen some, high school level initiatives and programs that support that kind of more, climate education focused. Are there, for our younger grades, earlier grades, are there some things that you have seen? And going back to this question that Radhika had posed about creating that continuum, starting even earlier, what are some things that you have seen, or if there's something you can share? And for the rest of our audience, I also invite you to post any questions. You can either raise your hand or put them also in the chat, and we'll be looking out for them. Thank you.
I'll jump in really quick to that question and say, one, this is something I want to get smarter about, is early childhood ed. And two, I want to plug the Institute for Early Childhood Education at the University of Minnesota, and Sheila William Ridge, who runs that program, does a lot of outdoor education as just sort of an expectation for being in that program. And she's been working on this concept with a few other folks called Nearby Nature. So this is, the Institute's on the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus, but the Nearby Nature concept allows very young people to go outside and find nature where it is, and then do education there. And then you can pair that, and this is me thinking through my own lens through the center, pair that with stories, and then that bridges this connection. But I'm really inspired by that, and I want to learn from them.
Okay. Well, I see Dr. Bud McAllister. I see you raising your hand. Please go ahead.
I just want to add to that. The other advantage of working with young people, especially in the United States, as of 2022, people, young people under 22 were a lot black and brown.
Sorry, Dr.
And every year it's going to get a lot more diverse. So the longer we do this, the majority is going to, my understanding is
but I don't know if it was just for me, but the audio was cutting out.
Climate change. And like the gentleman said, they're angry. So that's the sport.
Thank you for sharing that. I was able to catch only parts of that, but I think you were mentioning the benefits of starting early is also that, you know, as the populations is getting more diverse, you know, we're educating early. So by the time those kids are growing up and we have already captured what we want to, the knowledge that we want to disseminate later in life, they've already started earlier on. I think that was perhaps what you were.
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you for sharing that. Mark Means, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge what Nick just said, because I was saying this. I've taught in my career. I've taught from 2nd to 5th grade, and since I started, I'm also going to plug my organization, Compass Education, which is our simple tools for using with anywhere from very, very young children up to they've used it at the United Nations and in large organizations like that. But when you listen to what the small children have to say, and you just give them the tools and techniques to be able to express themselves, you can't even believe what the ideas that come, the questions that come out, that you can just build on question after question after question. And it's the questions that matters. It's not about us as educators standing up and knowing all the answers. It's about listening to the questions and then asking more questions to sort of tease out possible solutions or possible steps forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Are there any other questions? I mean, speaking of different populations, one thing that came to mind earlier in one of our sessions today, one of the participants mentioned that even though, you know, in this space we try to be inclusive, a lot of times the communities that are invested or the ones that we want to include are often left out of our programs, of our conversations, of conferences and events like this. So I just wanted to reflect on that a little bit and ask you how, if you've seen that, you know, the population that we want to include actually not being excluded, whether intentional or not, that does happen. And if you have any thoughts on that, some actions or thoughts that we should all collectively have for our programming and things going forward, I would appreciate any comments that you might have on that as well.
I can kick us off. I think this is definitely an issue for sure, and something that we try to do here with this program, at least, is making it virtual is one way that we really look to be able to have educators from all over the world join us. And to that end, even so, we've had a lot of the educators I'll work with from like Uganda or in Zimbabwe will join in. There's different like connectivity issues or time zones, or I know like there was a really big rainstorm and then we're not able to communicate for a while. So providing different ways to communicate as well and engage. So like I'll record all of our sessions, but also provide like other ways of having reports on paper, like sharing out what's happened in the last couple of weeks with you and sharing that with the entire group so other people can comment and follow up on their process as well, answer questions together. Really, I think beyond that, those little things though, I think, which are very important, but I think even largely, I think a theme that we're hearing across here that I'm really excited about is this idea of like context specificity and really facilitating that. And so when we do our sprints, everything is about what is it that your context needs? What if it's a low cost option, if it's a no cost option. We've had a lot of teachers tell us like, my students they don't have a lot that they have access to, and we don't want them to feel like they need to have all these different resources. Usually a lot of the times being green can seem actually very cost intensive in our societies. And so how can we provide these no cost ways for them to engage and take action today? And really encouraging, supporting educators as they design within these specific contexts of their place and their people and their communities is, I think, really important.
That's great.
Similarly, when we developed our MDP program, that was key. We wanted to make sure that we were being that we really were offering anyone who wanted to participate in this MDP program the opportunity to do so. That's why we didn't really focus on, the first MDP program to launch was in 2009 at Columbia University. So we could have just been happy with that and let people supposedly come to us, but we understood that that's not the case. Not everybody can afford the cost of Columbia University. So that's why we decided to really branch it out and make sure that we have one of these MDP programs in as many places as possible. But that still doesn't, that no cost. This will cost money. So whether you're at University of Ibadan in Nigeria, which is one of our programs, or even University of Florida, the cost will be there. There will be a little bit something that you will need to pay. So one of the things we decided to do was we created, and I'm sharing this as an invitation to anybody who's interested. We created a course that's called Global Classrooms: Foundations of Sustainable Development. And it's a course that we offer for free online. So again, there is that barrier. If you don't have online access, you're not going to be able to participate. But it's online, and this course is September to December, 14 sessions. Jeffrey Sachs opens it, and he usually closes it. And we address a lot of topics having to do with sustainable development, the SDGs, and many different things. So we have a lot of students, a lot of people, community members who participate in the course that are not necessarily part of the MDP. And that was, in our small way, that was a way of addressing that issue that you just raised on. So thank you.
That's great. Lucy, I don't know if there's a link.
I think Lucy, can you give, I have an internet problem. I did not understand about the cost that you are talking about. I don't know if there is a link of that is cool, you can just put on the chat box so that, and then we can catch up from there, because it's very important. Thank you.
We'll do that right now.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to ask as well.
So something that Nick mentioned earlier is that, and it's something we do at the center as well for all our professional development, but we pay our teachers. So they sign up to take our professional development. We pay them a stipend. We give them professional development clock hours, and then we give them free books, and we pay to feed them. Whether they're in person, we pay for their dinner, or if it's virtual, we send them Grubhub credits so they can order their own food. So we really try and make these as accessible as possible. We host them after school hours, and we provide all these resources and money so that hopefully the teachers feel supported and like their time is being well spent. Not only are they learning, but we're just trying to support them in all the ways, giving them curricular resources, feeding them, and then giving them that stipend, hopefully to encourage and support them to come and learn from us. And for our Students Teaching Students program, the Climate Literacy Fellows, here in Spokane, we specifically partner and target Title I schools and schools with the highest percentage of free and reduced lunch. So those schools that are really looking for those hands-on innovative experiences with their students, especially in our neighborhood. So in Spokane, right next to Gonzaga University, is actually the poorest zip code in the state. And so we work really hard with all of the elementary and middle schools right around our neighborhood to make sure that those students are getting these experiences and that their teachers are feeling supported in the classroom. So trying to find ways to value and show our support for teachers in ways that are both monetary and not monetary can really help with that accessibility, as well as holding virtual things. So.
Oh, that's wonderful to support the teachers in those very concrete financial ways as well. It's so necessary. We're right about to end in terms of our time, but often when we talk about these programs, we talk about the programs, but not always get to hear from the educators more personal side. So I did want to ask our very last question, if you can just very briefly share your thoughts. What is the impact you personally want to see as an educator as a result of your work and your program?
I need to ask a question to Carly. I need to confirm one thing. Based on your program, is it based on in your place, or you have also partnership with the regional, like in Africa or whatever? So I don't understand how you are working with the teachers and how you can build the capacity of the teachers. So how do you do collaboration?
I didn't quite hear that. Did anyone else catch that question?
Elijah, could you?
Yeah, let me repeat again. Huh?
Hey, Elijah, could you?
Yes, I'm asking for the program that you are operating for, based on the teachers' capacity building and the way you pay the teachers and how you work together with the teachers. So I'm asking that, do you have a partnership in regional, or you just base where you people do you have any kind of relationship, collaboration with outside as partners or not?
Yeah, so Gonzaga, we have a school of education that they help support the professional development part, so paying for clock hours. And then we have a relationship at the state level with the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and they give us support. They give us money so that we can pay teachers. So we have a lot of partnerships, both at the local and the state level, so that we can support teachers financially. And so that's part of the work we do is getting those funds so we can pay teachers directly for their time.
Thank you. We're running out of time, but I really wanted to hear responses on my last question, so I'm going to push through for 2 more minutes. Did anyone want to share on that last question? Lucia?
Yes. Hi, and I was just going to quickly say, remind us of what is the question, because we've had, if
Right.
you can do it quickly.
So from your perspective as an educator, what is the impact that you personally want to see as a result of your work?
I'm happy to start. So one of the things that we really encourage is that both the students we interact with directly and the teachers that take our professional development come away with the creativity and imagination to imagine the future they want to live in, and are inspired and enthusiastic to take steps to make it happen, whether that's bringing it into their classrooms or doing something at home in their own lives. I don't want them to come away with a sense of impending doom, but an excitement and a creativity to create the world that they want to live in. It's always a bonus if people think science is cool at the end of our lessons, but that's really what we're hoping, is to create a community of people who are striving and moving in the same direction for the world.
I love that. Thank you.
I will echo Carly 100% and say all of that, absolutely. And I think really like the idea that this is going to be such a group effort, team effort across the world, every discipline coming together to do this type of work. So having students be able to see and teachers be able to feel confident that this is something they can take on, that they have the skills, the mindset, the knowledge, the support that they need to do this work, not just in the future, but today, whoever they are, whether you're a very young learner or an older learner, all along the lifeline, like being able to do this, it's something that we can all do together. So I think that's part of it, is feeling like this is having those skills to do everything you need to.
Yeah, quickly, a couple things. I want to see teachers getting paid more. I want to see climate literacy education standards in every state and climate literacy happening in every classroom every day. Nothing less.
And just for me quickly, it's as Laura mentioned, to create that world we want is not for me just only the responsibilities of the young people or the teachers or the older folks like myself. It's that collective, it's all of us coming together, working on it together. So if we can have more conferences like this one with even more people, including the young ones, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the information you shared, but also for me personally, even more the hopefulness and the just positive framing of education for sustainable development and climate education that you have shared through your personal experience and also through your programs. It's so appreciated. It was very heartening and so exciting to be a part of this. So thank you so much for everything you shared. For any remaining questions, I will ask you to please use the chat box since we are out of time so that we can get to our keynote from Ann Nielsen. Radhika, I will hand over to you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Wonderful panelists and wonderful discussion. Thank you, Hein, for moderating the panel so beautifully and tying all the threads together. I think that was wonderfully done. Handing over to Jasmine for introduce Anne for the keynote.
Of course. Hi, everyone. It's that time of the day again. We made it to our closing remarks. Thank you so much for being with us. We have an amazing day tomorrow, so don't miss out. It's going to be youth focused, so we'll have amazing panelists as well. I would like to introduce Dr. Nielsen. She received her EDD from Arizona State University in Educational Leadership and Supervision. Her interests in education and research have focused upon teacher professional subjectivities, teacher leadership, and school leadership using visual and qualitative methodologies. Dr. Nielsen currently serves as the director of the Office of Global Engagement in the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, where she has served as the principal investigator for multiple international initiatives. In addition to leading the implementation of multiple international initiatives, Dr. Nielsen has contributed to various international research initiatives focused on international education, teacher subjectivities, climate and sustainability, and also innovations in education. So, Anne, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank everybody for all their incredible work today and presentations. It's just been phenomenal. And I'm going to share the screen here because I have just a very short presentation. It won't be long, but I'm going to try and make this really interactive for us. We won't go into breakout rooms. So those of you that don't like it, sorry, Radhika. But we will make it active. My first entry into education as a professional was as a teacher. So I always go back to my teacher roots when I get in presentations. So let me just share the screen here. Let me see. Okay. And let's see. There we go. All right. So I first want to recognize that I am coming to you from Arizona State University, and our 4 campuses are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of indigenous peoples, including the Acamel Odom and the Peepash Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allows us to be here today. And as we get into the closing remarks, I really wanted to touch on this last session was almost a perfect tee up for what I wanted to talk about, because I think the changes we're looking to make and hoping to see in education are so radical and perhaps so different that it's going to take us time. And as Wendy so eloquently shared yesterday, this work is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So we're not in a race, but the changes we're looking to make do require us to think through perhaps some unlearning and some new ways of thinking, new ways of considering education, new ways of considering where school is located or how it's constructed. And I wanted to bring up a few things I think we might need to think about unlearning that youth have brought forward in some of the work we've done in the Turn It Around project, as well as I hear this, some of these things in my own language. I've heard them in our language today. It's a process, but I've also heard that the opposite, that we're making steps in these in addressing some of these issues. So I'm going to talk a little bit about unlearning some of these root metaphors that seem to have really kind of seeped into education. I think Noah and Aaron early this morning really got us off thinking about this with the grammar of schooling and bringing up Tayek and Cuban's work about, just some of how rooted in practice some of these are. I think education is one of the few professions that everyone has been touched by on some level. And so it's really hard to rethink what we're doing, but we're on our way. So one of the first metaphors I think we need to think about is that we need to kind of think about unlearning is the root metaphor of progress. And progress assumes that social change is linear. It's always associated with improvement and enrichment for everyone. So we're still caught up in this language, how we can measure impact. Progress assumes that the social change is always associated with the improvement and enrichment for everyone. And Wendy reminded us yesterday that this work, like I said, is a marathon and not a sprint. And as we were going through some of the sessions today, I was really thinking about, that kind of call to how are we going to monitor this? How are we going to measure this? I think the MEIS project gives us good insight into how to rethink progress using that UN framework on climate change and the commitment to action for climate empowerment. But also thinking about, maybe measurement is more local, maybe it's more formative, perhaps moving away from some of these global metrics of assessment that just really, don't really in the end tell us that much about what's happening in our classrooms or what's happening in education needs to be rethought. So I caution us to think about progress and remember that it can be slow, nonlinear. It can, we'll go forward to go backwards and vice versa. It's cyclical. So keep this in mind as we're moving forward. The next metaphor I wanted to talk about was the arrow of the metaphor of time, and just kind of the used to describe this unidirectional movement of time from past to future, which is linear and universal, highlighting the constant progression of events in an abstract, infinite time-space continuum. We see that also with the, kind of the thought that the earth is unlimited, the time is unlimited. And we know our community here knows this is not the case, but I think communicating that more globally and to the educational community needs to continue to move forward. Just moving forward. One of the things I thought about that came up today in the era of time was just, some of the practices that we're beginning to show, things are in their nascent stage, and it's okay to be, just starting and just thinking through how things are going. I think Carly said it well on that last session, it's the little things that matter. When we get stressed, when we go, get pressed for time, we go back to what we know, and often those old behaviors come forward. So I think she was really right in kind of talking in some of those, it's the small acts that make sometimes the biggest difference in what we're doing, and to keeping that in mind as we're moving forward. The next metaphor I wanted us to think about and kind of be cognizant of is the metaphor of that we're just machines, that education is a machine. It was kind of set up this way in the start of the 20th century with the Industrial Revolution and kind of this one-size-fits-all model. And so this nature as machine worldview focuses on reducing nature to its exploitable value to benefit humans in the name of progress and development. And a machine metaphor is one of those root metaphors that assumes the world operates like a machine. And this really stems from a lot of, some of the work that was done early in Western civilization that's kind of taken root in education. But I want to encourage us to think about, moving past that. And apologies, I'm trying to find my notes here from today because I was connecting it what everyone did. But I think what Dr. Helen Boyd shared with us in her keynote argument of that racism is a distortion of the relationship to the natural world. and that Black history education can be transformative by providing a longitudinal view and disrupt that linear freedom progression and can connect us from past to present. So bringing forward some of these, topics in education. And as she shared, Black history shouldn't just be in February. It should be all year long. This isn't just something that is compartmentalized to a certain part of our year. This is something that, if for it to truly be transformative, needs to happen over time, and we need to disrupt these time continuum patterns. Engaging students with things like memory work and thinking about how all of this comes together really starts to support our classrooms and our students in making these shifts. The next metaphor I wanted to touch on was the metaphor of universality. And this is one that kind of assumes that apologies, I'm having difficulty here. I'm just going to make it easier and just read from my notes on the screen. That Western modernist knowledge is in human exceptionalism and liberal individualism are universal truths. So I think, the more that we learn about the subtleties among all of us, and the more that we can engage more deeply in thinking through that we aren't necessarily a universal body of educators, of students. We need to think about the subtleties can really change us. And actually, Averin, who spoke in one of the sessions, really helped us today to think about, it's not just about diversity of content and the diversity of subjects, it's also about diversity of thought. So I really appreciated how we're continuing to be pushed on this metaphor through some of his comments. And then individualism is another root metaphor that comes forward, and it's based on the assumption that the individual, not the group, is the primary figure, and the independent whose self-interest takes over the collective good. This came up again in a lot of today's sessions, and I think Saya's meditation really helped us to push past that. One of the things, I was just at the CIES conference and I had a chance to attend. They had a special interest group on holistic and education, and I went to a meditation session. And one of the things I really learned was meditation can really help our prefrontal cortex kind of open up and get space for learning and taking in new information and stop relying on our reptilian brain, which is located at the back of our mind. And so I'm, really started to think about how we can kind of disrupt some of this and bringing more meditation and moments of space into our practice. In the Japanese culture, they have the concept of ma, which is the space in between. And I think sometimes these get lost in the rush in education. So bringing some of, challenging some of those metaphors in our daily work. And then finally, human exceptionalism. This is the one I think that's really the most predominant. And obviously it's an understanding that, a belief that all beings are organized hierarchically, with humans being at the top of the pyramid and everything coming underneath their care. And I think this is a root metaphor that is very embedded, especially in our societies that function in capitalism, where competition is valued. And I think Noah and Aaron's talk on transformation really resonated with pushing back against this individualism, and they're starting to see the concept of transformation come much more heavily within some of the policy language. I do hope it comes down to the classroom level so that our students and teachers can begin to really start to explore who are some of our other teachers that we're working with. It's beyond sometimes just the humans, but there are so much we can learn from nature, and positioning nature and animals and our surroundings as other educators is something I think is a critical component to begin to introduce. And so these all came together in our work, very similar to what we've been discussing here with some of the youth perspectives and what they're thinking about in moving towards a more just and sustainable future. And so you can see here some of their recommendations for us to take forward, which I think we're already beginning to touch on, but really thinking about how we're resituating the human within the Earth's ecological community, redefining education, transforming curriculums for ecological literacy. As the last group shared, it doesn't have to be one more thing. It can be the small acts that we begin to embed in our everyday practices that can begin to make these shifts. Opening up education to learning with the world, not just about. creating learning spaces of resistance, resilience, and recuperation, and finally engaging youth in the decision-making about their education futures. I think this last one is really critical in something that resonated to me quite heavily last fall when I was able to go to the COP27, when they had the first 2 platforms dedicated to youth, and really to see their energy and the way they were engaging and networking and connecting was quite striking compared to the business as usual corporate setup of most of the COP meetings. So that was really interesting to see. So as we kind of look to going forward, I went back to the Turn It Around cards, and I pulled one card that I often go back to, and I want to read the words of one of our youth who said, "What stops me when I'm on the verge of giving up is the fact that one day in the future, my voice and words will motivate all those young minds who think that one failure can catastrophically destroy their future. Even in a situation when things make me question my future, the idea of me being able to shine through my words and light someone's darkness keeps me going today." And so I wanted to take that message forward, and I wanted us to kind of think about that together. And so I'm going to ask that you first in the chat submit 3 key words that are buzzing in your mind after the past 2 days. So take a minute and just in the chat, let's flood the chat with 3 words that are just buzzing in your mind after the last 2 days of learning and engagement. And please just type your thoughts in the chat. This is for everyone. We've got thoughtfulness, history, slowing down, connecting, perseverance, rethinking, transformation, coalition, radical. And then if you can, I'd like you to shift to thinking about 2 new groups or individuals you might connect with to amplify or connect your own work from these meetings. Maybe there's someone in the chat, maybe there's someone from yesterday that you're thinking of connecting with. Maybe there's someone in your local community. Maybe there's someone that you haven't spoken to in a while, but just throw that out there. Let's manifest some of these changes moving forward and put it out there. Who are 2 individuals or groups that you're going to connect with to amplify or connect your work further? SDSN coffee chat is a great one, Wendy. Childhood Education International, they're amazing as well. AMLADA, yeah. Educational diplomacy. And lastly, what's one concrete act you can take in the next week to start you on your way? What's one thing you're going to do in the next week that's going to just really start to shift you? It doesn't have to be a huge act. It can be actually setting the date to make this meeting with the person you just listed. It can be, adding something to your calendar, but I think it's important that, as we kind of come to these sessions and come together, we think about the actions we're going to take forward. And sometimes it's just that first small step that we need to push ourselves to do. And I like to usually give myself just a week with one small step. It gets me on my way, gets me thinking, and I feel the progression. And again, I go back to what Carly said, it's the small things that I think often make the biggest changes. Mapping your work on participatory budgeting. Nice, Tara. I see a lot of people joining the SDSN coffee chat. That's an excellent way to start. Or learning more about the SDSN coffee chat. Connecting with some of the people that have been here. Excellent. Madhavan, you got to meet the Dean of ASU. Excellent. All right, and that's it for today. So hopefully you've had a chance to reflect on some of the important parts of the conference, started to think about who you've met and how you can continue to connect with them, as well as your next steps right away so that this work can continue. Hopefully that it'll continue into tomorrow's session. So I'll turn it back over to Jasmine and Radhika.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for tying everything together so perfectly and for giving us the opportunity to reflect at the end of the day. That really ties the entire day together for most of us. Radhika?
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you. And I think you said it all. And I think Lucia mentioned, and also Anne mentioned that we need to listen from the young generation as well, the leaders of tomorrow. So I think we'll do that tomorrow and we'll take this forward and have this discussion. Sorry about the background noise. There are kids at home and they are now demanding my time. But I think it was a fascinating day. With lots of interesting thoughts, and we will continue this discussion tomorrow and really will get a chance to unlearn and learn from the young voices tomorrow. So tomorrow is going to be half day, 9 to 1 o'clock, and I think it will be another fascinating day like the 2 days have gone by. And I think you did a marvelous job of summarizing everything through those metaphors and themes. Thank you so much, and making it interactive, I think, is best. I think I got to learn a lot today through the activity.
I learned so much from everyone as well. I'm exhausted.
Yes, exhausted, but lots of thoughts. So it's good. Let's keep thinking, and let's come tomorrow to reconvene and continue with our dialogue.
Radhika, quick question on the feedback form. Yes. Do we fill a form for each of the days, or do we fill one at the end of the 3 days?
Good question. Maybe Sonia can answer.
You're welcome to do it either way. We have it so you can choose which days you attended. So if you want to do 2 days today and 1 day tomorrow, that's totally fine. We just wanted to share it every day so that people could share their thoughts fresh. We don't want you to forget, these days are so long and we're attending so many things. So if you want to just, put things out of your brain and onto the form today, feel free to do so. We would definitely recommend that.
Okay, the form today, the link that you have shared seems to be a little different from the one I filled out yesterday. So if you just want to recheck the link that you have shared.
Thank you. That's so helpful.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Sonia sent the correct link.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Hope to see everyone tomorrow.
Hey, so cute, Mateo.
Oh, Mateo's here. Hi, Mateo. That's the youth of the future.
Sorry, I figured I could bring him because it was at the end. He just came into the room, so he was good holding up, right?
The best way to end a long day of conference.
Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye.